WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been handed what may be only a temporary reprieve in his fight against extradition to the USA. The US must assure Julian Assange has freedom of speech protections and will not receive the death penalty before he is extradited, judges have ruled. US authorities say Mr. Assange endangered lives by publishing thousands of classified documents, and they have now 3 weeks to provide the UK court with the assurances they seek. So, here to discuss this hugely significant free speech case, I am joined by Julian Assange's brother, the film producer Gabriel Shipton. Gabriel, you must be thrilled by this reprieve, at least a temporary reprieve at the moment. What do you make of some of the critics of Julian Assange, of your brother, who say, well, he did put people's lives at risk and therefore he needs to face justice?
Well, we asked them for the proof. Where is the proof that he put lives at risk? I think during the leakers trial, Chelsea Manning, there was a general who was hired by the Obama administration to actually try and find anybody who was harmed by these leaks. And they admitted under oath that they couldn't find anybody who'd been harmed or came to harm because of Chelsea Manning's leaks and because of what had been published. Similarly, during the extradition hearing, the prosecution had to admit exactly the same thing, that they couldn't actually find anybody who had been harmed by these leaks. And it's actually the opposite. What these leaks exposed was war crimes, a helicopter gunship in the collateral murder video, firing on two unarmed Reuters journalists. So I think that's actually where the harm lays in this situation, in this case.
Do you fear that it's become very politicised? I mean, we've seen major political figures in the USA going back and forth on this one. You know, Donald Trump at one point wasn't a big fan of WikiLeaks. Then all of a sudden, your brother leaked the emails from Hillary Clinton, and all of a sudden, WikiLeaks had some value. So this has become a sort of a kind of political football over there, hasn't it?
Yeah, political football, a political hot potato now for the Biden administration. During an election year, I don't believe they want, a publisher, a journalist coming to their soil in a huge free speech case during an election period. This was really ramped up under the Trump administration. It was Mike Pompeo, who was then CIA director, who sort of issued this weird fatwa type thing against WikiLeaks and Julian in 2017 when he became CIA director. And that's where we saw the sort of politicization and the real political motivation behind this prosecution emerge. It was pushed by Mike Pompeo, and when he went into the State Department, and eventually when Julian was taken from the Ecuadorian embassy in 2019 and charged with this unprecedented Espionage Act prosecution. I mean, what you're seeing here is the US using its secrecy laws to reach into the United Kingdom and grab people that they don't like what's being published. I think it's really an attack on the sovereignty of the United Kingdom, an attack on free speech and journalists in the United Kingdom.
I've been very surprised, actually, at the lack of coverage of this story generally in the mainstream media. Are you surprised that free speech campaigners aren't rallying behind this? Because you would have thought that even the US government would be quite grateful when elements within their intelligence services or military services are being exposed for doing things that are wrong, so that improvements can be made.
Well, that's how Western democracies are supposed to work. But, we see more and more these institutions trying to cover up their wrongdoing, their own crimes. And that's become pretty prevalent these days. But I think we have seen quite a bit of support from the UK press. Slowly they've been coming around to this idea that this could actually affect them. It could affect, what they want to publish, if they want to publish national security journalism. Particularly with one of their closest allies in the United States. We have seen in Australia, we've seen the Australian government a resolution pass in the Parliament here, with over 2/3 of the Parliament calling on the UK and the US to bring this to a close. Recently, the German Chancellor called on the United Kingdom not to extradite Julian Assange. So there is quite a bit of build-up around the world of support, and I think we're going to see more and more of that as people get to know what this is about and how this threatens, their right to know what their government is doing with their tax dollars.
That's very interesting that you mentioned the press there, because really this case is largely about freedom of the press and freedom to report. I believe the US government has acknowledged that they couldn't really go all out on this, because if they're going to prosecute Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, they'd also have to prosecute The Guardian, for instance, the UK newspaper, who also published a lot of the materials that were leaked at this time. So really, isn't this a question of press freedom first and foremost?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in the hearing back in February, the High Court judges actually put to the prosecution, would this mean, under this extradition, would this mean that you could extradite any journalist from the United Kingdom for publishing classified material or secrets that you don't want exposed? And the prosecution actually had to answer yes. This would be a precedent that would apply to any journalist or any publisher in the United Kingdom. So it is really all about press freedom, all about investigative journalism. And I think what the courts have now asked for, these, so-called assurances, I call them diplomatic notes, because they're just a political note from the US DOJ to the UK. It's not actually able to be enforced once Julian is on US soil. But it would be very interesting if US, First Amendment free speech laws were actually able to be applied to everyone in the UK. I can't see the US making that sort of assurance.
Do you feel, as a family member, this is your brother that we're talking about, do you feel a sense of relief that the British government is seeking these assurances, or the judiciary rather, is seeking these assurances that at least they can't go for the death penalty in this case? I mean, this must be a relief for you and your family.
Yeah, it certainly is, but we have mixed feelings about this judgment. There are points that the UK judges refused to allow in this appeal, and those points we believed were very significant. Those were regarding the plots by the then Pompeo CIA, plots to kidnap Julian from the Ecuadorian embassy. There was even a sketch to assassinate Julian that was drawn up within the CIA, and that was reported in Yahoo News. There were 3 Washington, D.C. reporters who had 30 former and current intelligence sources confirm those plots existed. And the judges wouldn't allow that, which I thought was very, very peculiar, because that's British law had essentially been broken there with these murder attempts on Julian Assange when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. But we are relieved that Julian has not been extradited today or this week, but you have to look into the future now. If the US does provide these assurances, then his extradition would become imminent. And at the magistrate's level, they actually rejected this extradition because of the expert witness testimony that said if Julian were to be extradited, it would ultimately lead to his death due to the prison conditions and the support that he would get there. He'd be kept in total isolation, no communication with the outside world, in a very harsh state-run prison. We've all seen Shawshank Redemption. We know what US prisons are like, and they're horrible, dark places, and even worse for national security cases.
I presume you've been in touch with your brother over this period. How is he faring in all of this? Because it must be an awful psychological stress not knowing what the outcome is going to be. Yeah,
that's right, Andrew. And it's been now 5 years that he's been held in Belmarsh prison. He spends most of his time in a 2 by 3 metre cell. This endless not knowing of if he's going to be extradited or not is wearing him down. It's wearing him down physically, mentally. I saw him at the end of the month, and he's 52, and he looks like he's almost 60 to me. That's the sort of speeding up of the aging process, and the sort of physical how the physical degradation represents itself physically. And sitting across from him, it's very scary, very worrying as his brother. It's particularly when you leave the jail and there's nothing you can do to help him other than advocate for him publicly and work on this campaign. But he's hanging in there. He's still got a fighting spirit, and I think it's all the people he knows are out there fighting for him and advocating for him that keep him going on the inside.
Well, Gabriel Shipton, I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this case. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers, Andrew.